Hi, I'm Zoe Desmond, the founder of Frolo, the award-winning app for single parents that features both community and dating modes. And I'm also co-author, along with my wonderful friend Rebecca Cox that I made through Frolo, of the book How to Be a Happy Single Parent. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Frolo podcast. And today I am so happy to be joined by Dr. Martha, a clinical psychologist specialising in family therapy. Dr. Martha, it is so lovely to have you here, and it was just such a treat. We saw each other on Wednesday at Zoe from the Mother Crimes book launch, so it was really lovely to connect in person for the first time, and excited to chat to you today.
It was so lovely to meet you. Thank you so much for having me today. It's so nice. We get to have a proper chat.
Exactly. And there's so much that I want to ask you. So first of all, a clinical psychologist specialising in family therapy, what does that actually mean?
Good question. So I have a doctorate in clinical psychology. So I've been trained to work with people across the lifespan, it's called. So from like zero, so mothers who are pregnant, for example, up to older age and bereavement in a number of settings. And then I've specialised in paediatrics, which is health. And I've specialised in working with children and young people. So once you qualify, you can specialise. And that's kind of my area: children, families, teenagers. And then I did a diploma in family therapy because most of my work is with families, with parents and their children. And anything that I do with a child, no matter their age, doesn't really generalize or continue without the support of the parents. And so much of my work is with parents without their children, because actually there's a lot of research that shows that how we are with our kids, the things that we do, the things that we say are more powerful than one-on-one therapy with somebody like me, with a child. That actually the power comes from supporting the parents in building positive, secure relationships with their children, and even navigating things such as anxiety or any of those things. It's more powerful if I support the parents to do the work with their kids than if I do the work with the kids on their own, if that makes sense. That's what it's about.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. And just to have that holistic, well-rounded approach, because it seems odd, actually, even saying it like that and explaining it like that kids would be dealing with a kind of therapist completely just by themselves without the parents having the, being informed, educated, made aware of all of the different challenges that might be presenting themselves to the kid to create certain, issues going on in their life. So yes, it makes complete sense. And I'm curious as to what led you to the work that you're doing. And I'm curious as to how your childhood was, if that's okay to ask.
Yeah, no, it's such a good question. You know what, Zoe, nobody ever asks me these things. So I love it when people do, because I'm like, this is really interesting. I never talk about that really. I'm a kid of the 80s, so I think my upbringing is pretty similar to other people. I was raised on punishment and reward. And I think it's important. Culturally, I'm from a Hispanic culture, and I think that is important because there are certain ways of parenting in Hispanic cultures that are relevant, I think. And so I was raised in a way that was quite strict, particularly because I'm a girl. So in Hispanic culture, there is a difference between the way that you parent a girl to a boy. I was also raised, my parents are Spanish, and I was raised with like Catholicism in the background. Even though I'm not religious, my parents allowed me and my brother to make a choice about religion because my parents had mixed views about it, which was for me such a gift because I'm not religious. I don't have a faith. I see myself as a human of the world. So I've kind of nitpicked things, if you like. I don't have a faith, but I am quite spiritual. So it allows me to, be who I am. And my brother's chosen to be religious. So, he went through all of it. So he wears a cross. He's very religious and I am not. It's just, but again, I think that influenced the parenting that I had in terms of being a girl, in terms of like, I'm going to say this, but I'm the first person in my family to, for example, have sex outside of marriage.
Wow.
And that's a big deal. It's a big deal in my family. I'm also the first person in my family to leave home to study, because I moved to come to the UK to go to university. And that was a big deal. Nobody else has, other than my brother, but I've got cousins and they didn't do that. Like,
wow.
Nobody in my family has done some of the things that I've done. And I'm I don't like this term, but so I'm not going to use it. I was going to say the black sheep, but I'm not going to say that. But I am the odd one out.
I was about to say you're the courageous game changer, opening forging a new path. Which is that's how I see it.
Yeah. I love that you've called me courageous. I think that's really nice. I don't feel courageous a lot of the time. So I think that's a really nice reflection for me.
I think of myself as the black sheep of my family as well. I've been the one that's been going, always doing the different thing, always kind of, not conforming, I suppose. Also raised in a Catholic family, also not now a practicing Catholic. So lots of parallels. But no, I think was that scary to be, forging that sort of path for yourself at the time? Did you feel supported?
It's scary. I think that is the right word. It is scary. You're doing something against the grain. You're doing something a little bit rebellious. So I think of myself as a little bit rebellious because I think I am. I've always questioned things. Like my parents would say, too much, stop questioning. But I did. I questioned stuff. And it never... Some things never sat comfortably with me. And so I guess it does take courage to kind of say, I'm going to do something a little bit different, something that the rest of you might not like. And I would say I'm quite a people pleaser. I was brought up to be a people pleaser, and I was very disciplined. That was always the word when I was little. She follows the rules. She does everything right. But then I became a teenager and I became older and I just was like, I don't want to follow the rule. Well, I do, because I do follow the rules a lot. I can see myself kind of being really scared because it's scary and then thinking, but this isn't what I want to do. I want to do this. So I got to run with it. But I think, I think it's interesting because a lot of how I was brought up is not what I kind of talk about. I talk about something very different. So I am one of those people. I am like, I think, most of the parents who follow me in my Instagram community or who buy my book, that I am doing something very different than what was done to me. I think the slight difference is that I am quite confident about it. And I think it is to do with my training. It is to do with the fact that, again, this goes against the grain in my family, but I waited a long time to have children. And it was a privilege, because to me, it's a privilege if you can have a child. I didn't know if I could have a child, so it was a real risk. And it was a privilege that I was able to make that choice, but I put my career first. I am very career driven. And so I did that, which again goes against the grain in my family. And I have these two beautiful children and I'm just so pleased. And there's a part of me that wishes I'd had them earlier just because I want to be in their lives for longer. So that's not something I thought about before I had kids. But I regret nothing. I made the choices I made. But the way I parent them is so different to how I was parented. And I was really struck by it like straight away, as soon as I had a baby, because I had lots of opinions, as we all do when we're new mothers, right? But especially from loving family who wanted to support me. But actually what they were saying was like so against anything I wanted to do that it ended up, again, creating lots of clashes in my family, like friction. And I don't think friction is necessarily bad, is how I experience it. I just think it's uncomfortable. There's discomfort in it. It's much easier to just do the same as everybody else. But actually, it allows people like my parents to experience something very different through me. And I think it has helped them because they're now seeing how my eldest is, even though I did things very different from them. And they're like, oh, things like not making them kiss them. Consent is a big thing for me. And it created so much friction in my family. In my family, you kiss elders. You kiss your elders, even if you've never met them. I remember kissing and hugging like these old men, and I was a tiny young girl, and they were like, it's so-and-so, step uncle, whoever. And I was like, what do I, horrible. They were kind people. Nothing bad happened to me. And that's lucky, is what I think. But with my children, I'm like, no, they get to make that choice. And my parents found that very difficult. But now they see my daughters being willingly affectionate, and it comes from them. It's not me saying, go and kiss your grandma. They run to her and they're like, oh my God, I'm so happy. I've been looking forward to seeing you. I made you a card. I made you a drawing. And I said to them, how often did I do that? Not for my grandparents, because I loved them and I had that kind of relationship with them, but other people. How often did I do that? I didn't. I used to stand there frozen because I knew I'd be forced to kiss these older people and I didn't want to. And now my daughters are able to kind of speak for themselves. They give affection when they want to, when they feel safe. And they just say no when they don't. And I'm like, that's healthy and it's protective. But, I think it's tricky.
And that's a really interesting one, actually, because I encountered that situation just a couple of days ago. I was catching up with a friend, and there are two kids, and my friend was like, give Zoe a hug, give Zoe a kiss. And the kids didn't want to. I didn't take it in any way personally at all. They were just being kids, doing their thing. And I was like, please, it's okay. Don't worry about it. And my friend was getting really stressed going, what should I, give Zoe a kiss? And I felt so uncomfortable because it's just, what an example of one of these things that seems to have been passed down through generations and just not questioned. It's just the way things are done. But as you said, with teaching about consent, it's so crucial that our kids understand what feels safe or what feels right, or checking in with themselves. Am I comfortable with this right now? Or maybe I'm not right now, but maybe I will be in 5 minutes. Or
What you said is so important, Zoe, about not taking it personally, not feeling rejected, because as our children grow up and hopefully they make romantic relationships with people as well, it's about not feeling rejected when somebody says, I don't want to give you a kiss tonight, or, I don't want to be physical tonight. I don't want to be intimate today. I'm tired. It's about not seeing that as a rejection, just seeing that as like, okay, well, that's okay. That's not something you want. We are still a couple. We can still be loving. We can still be close. It doesn't have to be that way. And I think so many adults feel rejected in those moments. And it comes from not learning that you're allowed to say no, and not learning that if somebody says no to you, it's not a rejection of you. It's just, in this moment, I don't want to be touched. But we can still show each other care and affection in other ways.
I was going to say, but then, just to throw a bit of a jumble into the pot, throw in, the Catholic background in on top of that as well. And that creates something even more interesting. But yeah, that's another conversation altogether. But in terms of, you're obviously a mom to two kids, and I know your youngest is really young. So your youngest is how old is your
11 months.
11 months. So do you think that you will have, do you think that you'll parent your two kids differently based on their personalities and their needs? Frolo is the app that several thousand single parents say has been life-changing for them in the most profound way. If you're a single parent and want to connect with other single parents and open yourself up to an amazing support network and new experiences, then the Frolo app is the one for you. The Frolo app has two modes: community mode for meetups and holidays, guidance and support, chats, and discovery to make it easy to find like-minded local single parents near you. Dating mode is a mindful, safe, and respectful dating offering where everybody is there to date another single parent. The Frolo app is free to download and use, with the option to upgrade to premium for access to lots of additional premium features for an elevated experience, which makes it easier than ever to access the incredible connections and experiences you're looking for. To download Frolo, search for Frolo, Frolo, on the app or Google Play Store, or go to www.frolo.com for more info. We can't wait to see you on the app soon.
I think it's impossible to parent children the same, like genuinely. I think we are different parents to all of our children, however many you have, if you have more than one, obviously, because parenting is bi-directional. It's both us and it's our children. And we are co-creating a relationship. We're co-creating how we respond to each other. And so already, although I've got an 11-month-old, her little personality is coming across now. It's very sweet. She's very different from her sister. Like, she's very different. I've got two very different kids. And I can tell they're just different. They have different interests. They have different responses. And so I can't parent her the same way. I have to, be a chameleon. I'm a different mother to her. As well as that, I am already a mother, right? So if she was my first, I would have probably parented her differently to how I'm going to parent her now, because I already have a 5-year-old, nearly 6-year-old. And, I've got a different kind of mothering experience to what I had the first time when I had none. I also have my eldest I have to look after and tend to and be with. So the parenting is inevitably different. And I think something that's really important as parents is that we acknowledge that that's just normal and it's healthy. It's normal that you parent your kids totally differently. It's also normal that you have a different kind of relationship. I often think about it with parents, like think about your friends. Like if you have a good group of friends and you love them all slightly differently, right? Like, because one of them might make you laugh. And so, it's humor that really connects you both, and so you're really giggly or whatever. The other one might be super kind and, I don't know, kind and willing to like support you all the time, and you support each other more of like an emotional way. And then there's another one when it's always a bit wacky and a bit wild, and the way you relate to them is completely different. It's just, you are the same person, but you're different in relationship with those people. And it's no different with our children. Because of their personalities, they're going to interact with our personality slightly differently. So although lots of parents find this uncomfortable, this idea of you might have a favorite child, in quotes, you might have a favorite child. And that's okay, because it just means that your temperaments, your personalities, they just align a little bit better. It doesn't mean that you love your other children any less. It just means that that relationship is different, and that's okay. And I think it's really important that we understand that, because I think a lot of parents want to parent their children exactly the same. And you can't do that. It just doesn't work. You've got to learn to like adapt, because one thing works with one kid and then it'll totally not work. Like strategy wise, it might not work with your other. So you need to adapt yourself, and you need to have a more kind of flexible approach, because kids' needs are all different as well.
Yeah. And what are some of the most common parenting issues or asking you for advice that parents come to you with?
I get a lot of anger. People ask about anger a lot. Anger and anxiety, the big emotions. And then I have lots of families who go through separations, whether it's, a short-term separation or long-term separations, such as divorce. I have lots of conversations about that and how to support parents in being co-parents to their children, but also navigate the conflict that sometimes arises with a separation, and also the kind of the pain, the grief. I think it's a form of grief that can happen when a relationship breaks down, and how it impacts on the whole family. And extended family, I'm going to include them, because it often just impacts on like the whole network. Friendships can often get affected as well. So I have lots of those conversations, as well as like specific conversations around like anger and anxiety are my top ones probably. And then I do lots of work with teenagers. And that's like a whole other world.
I can imagine. I'm actually a little fearful about the teenage years already. I'm not going to lie. But with the separated parents piece, I'd love to delve into that, obviously, because it's so relevant to the Frolo community and to our listeners. So, can you share any advice or guidance about how people can best support themselves and each other through separation?
So, I mean, I say this every time, so I'm going to say it now. But, I don't think anybody separates lightly. I think it's a difficult decision. And even when it feels like the right decision in a couple, so, I meet couples who are like, we've agreed, like, we're actually settled in this and we're both okay with this. As painful as it's been to navigate, we're okay with it. It still hurts. It's still difficult. So obviously there are acrimonious separations and they're more painful, but and complex, but even in a good situation, separating is always hard. So for me, it's important that as parents, as adults, you're just honor that. Like be gentle with yourself because it's a hard thing to do. And even if it feels like the right decision for you and your family, it's still going to be painful. So be kind to yourself. There is so much guilt attached to separation. And, the other thing I would say to parents is you're not failing. It's not a failure. And again, we were talking about religion and all of that. I think we've got this idea of marriage until death do us part, right? And if you're not doing that, then there's something wrong with you. You have failed. And I guess I see marriage in a much more flexible way. Like, I think the modern view of marriage is very different. I think marriage is about a commitment to each other, to build a family and to carry on being a family. So this is what I talk about with my couples, my families. It's a commitment to say we made a family and we are a family, even if we are no longer in a romantic couple, because that's different. So for me, a romantic couple is not the same as a family unit. And to your children, you will always be their parents. No matter where you are, who you're with, you are their core family. And so that's kind of part of the work that I will do with a couple. It's about thinking about how do you remain a core family to this child, even if you're not romantically involved, even if you're saying, we just don't really like each other anymore. And that's okay. Because then for me, the work is about remembering that you love your child. You both have something in common. So can we work from a place of respect and focusing on the child rather than focusing on you as a couple? So your differences, that's absolutely fine. Let's just leave them. When we're focusing on the family unit, we focus on the kid and we put their needs first. We put their, rather than bickering about you did this differently to how I do it, or I told you not to do X, Y, and Z. Can we think about what that child needed in that moment? What do they need? And was it okay that this parent acted in that way? Is it still respectful of your child's needs? Is it still valuing what your child, deserves from you? Or so that's what we focus on. That's the focus. So remembering that to your kid, you're their family. And then importantly, I think the most important thing is to try, and this is so hard for some couples, but to try and stay respectful when you're together in front of your child. This is really hard, and it depends where you're at in your separation journey and what else has happened. But as much as possible, like this is true of all parents, you can only control yourself. You can't control the other. But how you show up in those moments in front of your child is going to stay with your child. So if the other is doing things to kind of wind you up or whatever, it's up to you to learn how to regulate your emotions. The thing I talk about the most. Regulate your emotions. Model to your child respect. Maybe model boundaries like, you know what? I don't really like the way you're talking to me. I don't think it's okay. So we're going to go now. But we'll stay in touch about next week, for example. Really boundaried, respectful. All you can do is you. You can't control your ex-partner. You can't. It's impossible. So just don't try. Because when children get older, the thing you need to remember is you parent for life. You don't just parent for childhood. When they are adults, they've got minds, they're intelligent. Give your children credit. They will remember those things. They'll remember things like, well, this parent never talked badly about the other. But when I went round to that house, they were always criticizing my other parent. They were always putting them down. So I think as parents, we often think like, that's not okay. And of course it's not okay. But our children learn. When they're older, they choose who they stay in relationship with. They choose who they feel safe with. They choose who they don't just send a birthday card to, but they actually call in the middle of the week to just say hi. Like, I want to be that parent who gets the random phone call. I don't just want to be the parent who gets the Christmas card, right? So try and remember that, as hard as it is, because it's really hard. But when you do, even if you're like frustrated that your ex-partner isn't being respectful or civil or whatever it is, if you are showing up in that way, that's what you're teaching your child.
Yeah, that is just such brilliant advice. And all of that I have lived through, all of those examples that you've just shared. And it's so true. We can't control the other parent. So there's no point in, it's just so important to self-regulate, as you say, and just to, it's a constant reminder, keep my side of the street clean, keep my side of the street clean. And even though it doesn't feel fair or just, and sometimes I will admit there have been times over the years where I've felt like going, this is so unfair that, I am almost protecting the other, parent or whatever situation from, things. But it feels so important because my son does pick up everything and he notices everything. He even notices the energy. He notices the tension, even when nothing's been said. So it is, and of course it affects him, and of course it impacts him. So that is, definitely something I've noticed. And on that point, I wanted to ask your advice about, these kids who are going between the two homes and feel a duty to protect, the other parent or each parent, because I do see that on my watch. And I know a lot of my other friends through Frolo and a lot of people in the Frolo community have mentioned the same. It's that the kids feels this duty. So it's almost like this, they feel this duty to protect a parent, to not say things or to take sides or to, and that must be really, it must be so difficult because, as you have pointed out, they see it as a family unit. They don't see it as, so it must be really, really hard to do that. And that kind of breaks my heart, I have to say, with my son, that he feels that he can't be fully open and feel fully safe with both of us to just share his feelings or his experiences or what he did, whatever he feels like talking about, instead of filtering because he's worried about upsetting someone.
I think that's how all children feel. I think they always want to protect both parents. I think the fact that you're aware of that, Zoe, is so important. It says something about you as a mother. It says something about your ability to attune to your son and to know that he is filtering information. And if you're concerned about that, the best thing you can do is just name it. Doesn't mean he's going to stop filtering, okay? Because that's not the aim, really. I know that's what you'd want, but you can't make him. The only thing you can do is be very clear with your son that his job is not to protect you, that you are sturdy, and that maybe he's seen you upset or angry or crying. And if he has, I would applaud you, because that means he knows you're a human. That's great. But it is about saying to your son, I'm allowed to have my feelings and they're mine. You're not responsible for how I feel. And you can tell me anything. You can tell me anything about what you do with your other parent. You could like share any experiences, whether they're good or they're bad, and I will not get involved. And if you're in a different place in your separation, you know, early on versus a bit later, which might feel different, you can say to your child things like, early on, I used to find this really painful. And I know that you felt that too. But now I'm a bit more mature, you know, things that I would say, I'm still growing up. I'm still growing up. I'm still learning things about myself, about parenting you. And actually now it won't hurt me if you tell me you're having a great time. I want to know that you're having a great time. So if you want to share that with me, I would love it. And if you don't, that's okay. I just want you to know nothing can hurt me. Okay. When you're off with your other parent, I just want to know that you're safe. But the rest, it's not going to upset me. Like, you know, it's fine. You can talk about anything with me. It's fine. And if it's other stuff, you know, like, you know, they're saying words or comments about you, which often happens in other families, again, be explicit about it. Say to your child, I know sometimes the other parent might say not very nice things about me. I want you to know that that's because they're feeling hurt. Like, let's teach our children mature emotion, right? Emotional intelligence is something that so many adults have not matured in, but we can teach our kids and like navigate it messily. It's okay. I think it's really important to say to your child, I know the other parent doesn't say nice things about me, but I'm not hurt by it. You don't have to protect me. You also don't have to stand up for me in that other house. I know our relationship. I know how much you love me, and hopefully you know how much I love you. So it doesn't bother me. They're angry. They're upset. People say things when they're angry and upset they don't mean. It's okay. Whatever they say about me when I'm not there, it's totally okay. They don't have to like me. When we talk like that with our kids, they kind of go, oh my God, really? So I'm free of having to filter. I'm free of having to protect. And, you know, they might still choose to do it because they don't want to hurt your feelings. And again, that says something about the goodness of your child and their ability to kind of be mature, because it is a mature thing to do, to choose our words when we're in the presence of others. That is a socially appropriate thing to do. We don't just blurt out things knowing it's going to hurt somebody else. We might hide it, or we might tone it down a little bit. And if your children are doing that, I want you to know that that's credit to you. You've taught them something healthy. This is healthy. But it's about saying to your child, nothing will hurt me. And, you know, giving them permission to speak. And again, their other parent may not do that, and that's okay. You're building a different, separate relationship with your child, and that's what you need to focus on.
Thank you. That's really, really helpful. The other question I wanted to ask you, I listened to an episode of your amazing podcast. It was the one around how do I get my child to do what I want them to do. And it was all about executive function. And I have to say, listening is a really tricky thing in my house at the moment. And it's like my son has become completely immune to his name when it's spoken by me. So but after listening to the episode of your podcast, I have to say, I feel like my expectations have been far too high, and I've been taking things much too personally. So I'd love to hear from you all about that and your wisdom around that piece, because I'm certain that it's something that every parent listening to this episode will relate to.
Oh, well, I think not listening is a really hard one for us as parents, especially if you've been brought up the way we probably have, Zoe, in, you know, a disciplinarian type of way, which is about like, you listen to your parents, you do as you're told. And then when our kids don't do that, we're like, what? Especially if we're not using kind of fear-based approaches or controlling approaches. It's really hard. Like, I find it really hard. And I talk about me a lot because I want people to know, like, of course I've got toolkits, but they're still really hard to apply. And I think the thing we as adults have to just accept and sit with the discomfort of is that we can't control our children. That isn't our job. Our job is to guide them and support them. But when we're like trying to get them to do something, then we need to learn to engage them. It's about collaboration rather than control. And that's a really, like, it's a tricky shift. And I think when you talk about executive function, our kids' executive function is really poor. Like, and it's to do with biological, developmental issues with our brain. I think issues is the wrong word, but it's to do with our brain development and the fact that children, their executive function isn't mature, so they get really engrossed in the moment. It's like they do mindfulness constantly, like the thing that we're supposed to work on, being mindful. Kids can do it just like that. And when they're engrossed in something, they do not want to be pulled out, and their brain is so deep in something that, like, pulling them out of it takes time. It's not as quick as, please do this now. Secondly, I think as adults, we need to acknowledge that we often ask our children to move on from what they're doing very quickly, but we ask them to wait all the time. If I think about my daughter, Mummy, watch me, like on her trampoline or whatever she's doing. And I'm like, give me a minute. Always. I think it's very rare for me to just stop and go to her, because I'm doing something, right? And I'm like, I'm making lunch. This is really important, obviously. As adults, we think everything we do is very important. But then my daughter is doing that, jumping on the trampoline. I'm like, come on, put your shoes on. What she's doing is not important to me, but it's important to her. So, we have this like dynamic of they need to do as they're told now, but also you have to wait for us. And we need to kind of shift that balance a little bit. Of course, sometimes your kid has to do what you want them to do. But I always say, like, save your energy. It's not your voice that's going to get them out. It's your presence. If you want to be collaborative, you need to move closer. You need to get their eye contact. You can't just scream their name from the other side of the house because they're just going to ignore you. And it's not because they're being rude or they're like, I don't respond to authority. It's because they're engrossed into something, because their brain has put them there. So you need to pull them out gently. And the best way to do that is to engage with them. Look at what they're doing. Show interest. What are you doing? Oh, you're jumping. That's great. What can you do? Oh, you can do a flip. That's amazing. Hey, we're going to have to go in 5 minutes, okay? But you're doing so good. I love watching you. That's so much fun. And then pick your battles. Like, one of the things I do is think, is this worth it? Is this worth me getting shouty and angry and losing it because I need to get out of the house now? Can I do something different? And I will, when I can, when I'm in the right mode, I will take the shoes, for example, and I'll bring them to my daughter and I'll be like, look, your shoes are here. I'm leaving in 2 minutes, okay? Come on, let's go. But often if I've already engaged with her and done something to connect, to kind of be like, we're in this together, we are now leaving rather than you do what I say. It's very different. We are leaving the house, not you are leaving with me because I'm telling you to. That's very different. She will often come. And sometimes she'll be like, oh, and then I have to show empathy. I know it's really hard to stop doing something you love. We really have to go. I promise you can do more later, whatever it is. But I think it's a very different shift from do as you're told to let's do something together. That's very different. And for me, I get stuck in that sometimes. Like, I try and get her to do what I want her to do, and then I have to pull back from it and like breathe. Like, actually, sometimes I just have to walk away and be like, okay, take a moment, this isn't working, and then I restart. But collaboration is a really important skill to teach our kids as well, because again, we're modeling something to them. People won't necessarily do what you ask them to do, right? They don't necessarily want to do it. To make somebody want to do something for you, do you a favor, you got to be in good terms with them. You have to build a positive relationship with them. Otherwise, all you're doing is bullying them into doing something. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Right. Okay. Teeth brushing is a very, can be a very tricky time in this household. So yes, tonight I am going to try, and switch it up, try a different approach and see how that goes, because that can be the thing that
brush your teeth with him.
Yeah, I do that actually.
I always brush my teeth with my daughter.
Yeah, Yeah, I do that. And that is good. That does always
Yeah.
help.
She much prefers it.
Yeah. And then we mirror each other and we copy each other,
Yeah. It's
we
not just
copy each
her
other.
having
Yeah.
this task. Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah. So your book, I want to hear all about it so that, everyone has access to your amazing tips and wisdom. So how to be a grown up. So can you let us know, all about your book?
Well, my book is very much about all these things that we've been talking about, really. It's about how you as a parent are the most powerful person for your child, and the power that you have in guiding them to learn all these good behaviors that you want them to learn. It's about the importance of your relationship with your child. So, like, to me, the core of parenting is our relationship with children, and how you can build that not just for childhood, but for life, and how holding that in your mind, that actually what you value the most is your relationship, is going to help you make better choices or healthier choices with your child. It just is. Because if you care deeply about the relationship you're building, rather than just assuming they're my child, they're going to love me, whatever, whatever I do, they're always going to come back to me. Don't trust that. Like, don't trust that. You need to learn that actually you're building a relationship. And what you build in childhood is the foundation of the relationship you can then have with them when they're adults, because then they make their own choices. Right? And it's not, of course, some children do it out of duty, but do we really want that? Like, I want to have a genuine relationship with my kids. So to me, it's about that. That's the core of my book. And then a lot of my book is about you. And it's about helping you reflect on things like the things that trigger you, why some things might be really difficult, why you might take some things really personally, and then helping you understand that it's not personal at all. Giving you lots of information on child development, brain development, because I believe that knowledge is power. I believe that when we understand that children are not mini adults, it puts us in a different place. I have this real deep thought about the way that we think about our children influences how we respond towards them. So, if you think that your child is disrespectful or they're rude, that's going to impact on how you respond. If instead you think, my child has really poor social skills, or, their brain is so immature, they don't know this, like they can't know this, it changes how you respond, because it will inevitably. And I also give you lots of practical tools and strategies, things that I use in my therapy, I've adapted so that you can use them with your kids, because as I said, you, the parents, are the most powerful therapist for your children. You're not their therapist, you're their parent, but you are their most powerful tool. So lots of practical ideas, strategies you can implement. Some of them are things that you do together. Some of them are things that you can use with your child. But I've tried to make it as, completely science-based. And I also share a lot about me. I share about my parenting challenges, positives, and there's loads of clinical stories, so real life stories that I've added in my book to give you a flavor, to give you something that is really hard to share on like Instagram, which is like, what does this look like? I've tried to give you that. And I know lots of people have found that really helpful to kind of see it. And there's all sorts of families in my book, because there's all sorts of families that I work with.
Amazing. Well, it sounds like a very well-rounded, brilliant book that every parent should read. So yeah, excited to get my hands on it, and yes, keep on soaking up your wisdom. But so my one final question is one just really centered around a lot of the parents that will be listening to this episode, and as single parents, we don't have another person in the household to, when things are really tough, or when our tolerance is not in a good place and we are just nothing in the tank and really struggling. And in those moments where, it's just things are really, really, really tricky, and it's kind of, in an ideal world, you'd be able to kind of run away and scream into a pillow or go for a run and let off some steam while the other parent takes over. Any advice on how to deal with those situations?
So firstly, it's really hard because I think, again, acknowledging the fact is important. Secondly, you need to see this as like you're in survival mode, and we all get to that place. But I think as single parents, you get to that place a lot more than others who do have that support, like you were saying. Thirdly, absolutely go and scream in a pillow. Like, so what I would do is put your child somewhere safe. Make sure they're safe, physically safe. They're still screaming, they're crying, they're losing it. It's fine. Like, honestly, no harm is going to come to your child because they're screaming and shouting. As much as you can, I would name what you're going to do, which is, I need a moment. I'll be back. Close the door. Go somewhere. Loads of parents will say to me, but my kid follows me. I know, my kid does that too. Keep going. Like, go, close the door. Then lots of parents will say, is that okay to close the door on your child? Yes, it's okay, especially if you need it. If you're like in this point of like, I'm going to have a breakdown, I'm going to say things I don't mean. I'm going to scream at them. Close the door, grab a pillow if that's what you're going to do, shout in the pillow, breathe, change position. So if you're standing up, lie down. Our bodies respond really well to movement. So it will shift a little bit. It will start to help regulate your body. Do whatever, write some angry things down, scream in a pillow, whatever. Your child is screaming outside the door, Mommy, that's fine. It's fine. You're going to go back to them. Give yourself that moment to breathe in whichever way is possible. I wouldn't suggest you run out the house because that will scare them. They'll feel abandoned. They're not abandoned if you're on the other side of the door, especially if you've said, I'm coming back. So they're screaming at you. You can say, I'm coming back. It's not going to sound like that. It might sound more like, I'm coming, give me a minute. That's fine. It's fine. It's fine. You're doing your best. You do that. You recharge as much as you can, not for 20 minutes, but give yourself, 5 minutes, absolutely fine. Open the door. Your child is fine. Give them a cuddle. Keep going. Keep going. But you're going in a different place. And then you can repair if that's what's needed, which is about saying, I know I walked away earlier and you really needed me, but I needed to be okay so I could help you. So me going in that other room was not me leaving you. It was me finding myself, finding my space so I could come back and help you the way that you needed. Do that with your child and just say, was it scary that I walked away? Yes, I'm really sorry that I scared you. I don't want to scare you, but sometimes I'm going to need my space. So when I need my space, this is what I'm going to do. And I will always come back. That's fine.
Yeah. It's an example of teaching our kids the modeling self-regulation as well. So it's all of these things, isn't it? It's our kids seeing we are not perfect humans. We get it wrong. We're a work in progress ourselves. We're trying our best, and to sort of model that and communicate it, is so, so important.
But also when you start to give yourself permission to do this, what you might find, I do this sometimes, and I'm on my own with my kids. I'm not a single parent, but my husband's not here. So it's me, right? With my eldest more than the baby, because the baby's not in that place yet. But you're also modeling to your children that when you're really angry and you're going to say the wrong thing or do the wrong thing, it's okay to say, set a boundary, which is, I need a moment. Like, I do not want to continue in this interaction because I'm going to do something I regret. So the boundary is, I need a moment, and it's okay to respect that. The same way that if you're having, a conversation with an adult and it's getting tense, it's okay to say, you know what, I can't think anymore. My feelings are overwhelming me. I'm feeling really angry. I can't talk. Like, this is not the moment. Let's cool down, and then we have a conversation. That is a skill. That is a skill that so many adults do not have. And I would put my hands up and say, I'm learning this because it's hard, right? If I feel really angry, I might explode. And I need to learn, like when I feel really angry, that it's okay to say, I need a moment. That's a skill. That's respectful, because then you're not venting your anger. You are regulating your anger so that you can come back and have an adult conversation or help your child. This is really important that we model this. So don't be afraid to do it, because it's not abandoning them.
Yeah, that is so reassuring and so helpful, because I think we put a huge amount of pressure on ourselves to handle every moment perfectly, and then the self hatred that comes into play when if we lose it, or start shouting, or it but it's, yeah, it's reassuring that from you, parenting, clinical psychologist, parenting expert, say it's okay to be human and to need a minute.
I mean, 100%. And I will just add, if you're going to take something away from this, good parents are not the ones that never shout to their kids. Good parents are the ones who repair. They're the ones who apologize. They're the ones who stay accountable to their behavior. They're the ones who say, I'm working on doing better, but this is really hard. It's going to take me time. That's what a good parent does. It's not about never shouting to your kid, because I don't want to teach my children perfection. Like, it's not healthy. It's not what they need as a standard. But I do want to teach them to be accountable for their behavior. I do want to teach them that even when you're an adult, you're going to mess up. And when you mess up, yeah, you might feel guilt, you might feel shame. You need to work through that to repair. You need to repair the hurt you've done to a relationship with another. And when we do that with our kids, then we are really good parents. So don't strive for perfection. Strive for doing your best. So I've decided I'm not even going to say good enough anymore. I'm just going to say you're doing good, because you are. You're doing good with everything you've got, and you need to remember that. And just apologize, and don't feel bad when you apologize. Feel proud that you're actually being accountable to your mistakes. You're naming your mistakes. You know that this is something you're working on. That's going to teach your kid the most important lesson, honestly, to be accountable for their behavior. That's huge. So many adults can't do that. They just walk away, like, I did nothing. I'm not to blame. I want a kid who goes, yeah, I mess up sometimes. That's what people do. But we can make things better. We can keep learning.
This is amazing. Yeah, I mean, there are definitely adults I know who still find it hard to be accountable with behavior. So it's definitely, but it's so interesting, because it's all a work in progress. Like, every day is a work in progress for, I feel, I'm a work in progress, and I just feel like being able to be on that journey with our kids as well. And yeah, and so, but yes, thank you so much, Dr. Martha. This has been such a valuable, interesting, helpful conversation, and yeah, super grateful for your amazing insights, and for being honest about your own background and your own story as well, which is really interesting to hear.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, thank you. And your book, How to Be a Grown Up, where can people find you and your book?
My book is in all good bookshops. It's on Amazon. It's in Australia. It's in America. It's around the world. So you can find it on Amazon. You can find it in all good bookshops. Waterstones often has signed copies, because I walk in there and I sign them. So if you spot one in Waterstones, it might be signed. Might be a little treat, a little message from me. And you can find me on Instagram. I'm Dr. Martha, psychologist, and I've got lots of exciting things coming out. I've got something really exciting on smartphones that is hopefully going to be talked about very soon, if not today, this weekend.
That was a question I wanted to ask you. But we didn't get it in. So I'll wait for your exciting announcement around that. But yes, such a key, relevant topic at the moment. So yeah, I'll keep my eye out for that.
Yeah, the smartphone conversation is just so big, and I think I've been asked so many questions by parents about, how do we talk about smartphones? How do I answer my children's questions? What do I do if I've already given my child a smartphone? Are they doomed? What do we do with our smartphones now? Like, how do we set boundaries? So I've tried to answer all of that in one document, with scripts, with tools, with smart ideas that you can fit into your everyday. And I've got this parent phone pledge on my community, which is about delaying smartphones as much as possible with our children and building healthy digital habits, digital skills, and for me, really importantly, digital resiliency, which is about knowing what to do when something goes wrong. Because as soon as children are introduced to the digital world, and it doesn't matter whether they're little or they're older, it's going to happen sometime. They need to know what to do when something doesn't go well. And again, it's something that I feel our generation of parents has to learn for themselves as well, because nobody taught us how to do this. I was never taught. I've just muddled through. So I've tried to build it into a document that will hopefully be really useful to parents.
Amazing. Is that document live at the moment, or is it coming out soon?
It's coming out very soon. So if you want to know more, I think you can sign up to my newsletter because I will share it. It's on my website. But it's coming out very, very, very soon.
Okay, brilliant. Well, that is one that I will definitely keep an eye out for, and we'll share it with the Frolo community as well. So thanks again, Dr. Martha. It's been such a pleasure talking to you, and congratulations and respect for all of the brilliant work that you're doing as well.
Oh, lovely talking to you, Zoe. Thank you for having me.
And that's a wrap for this week. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. If you did, then I have one small favour to ask. Please can you take a minute to subscribe to the Frolo podcast and give us a rating and review. This really helps other single parents who might benefit from it find us. The Frolo app, which is fully user verified for user safety, is available on the Google Play Store and the App Store, and you can find out more info and download links at www.frolo.com or follow us on Instagram at Frolo app. And you can purchase your copy of our book, How to Be a Happy Single Parent, at all the major book retailers. Until next time, have a great week.